brings blessings to ourselves and to the world, and the world needs blessings. So we're definitely powerful mover and shakers now, because we're going to create these enormous blessings for the world. That's what we're doing right now, creating blessings for ourselves, creating blessings for the world. And also, next week, of course, we will not have class because it will be the holiday of Shavuot. And that's all about receiving the Torah that God, for time 3,333, is choosing to give us himself. And he gives us the Torah, he gives us himself. And we're choosing to accept it. And when we recommit to learning, when we say, yes, I'm excited. This is so exciting. This is so special that I could be one with God. When I serve him, I'm nullified to him. But when I study his words, his will, I'm one with him. And that's worth it. Very powerful thought of that I learned today from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that when a Jew is just like I want to learn, not because I need reward, because I need to know what I'm supposed to do, because there's a commandment. I want God. If I want God, I want to learn, because that's how I get him. And just understanding and appreciating Torah as this enormous gift that always gives us the opportunity, whenever we decide we want to literally just get God. We take Torah, we get God. And that's like, wow. I could just get God by opening up a book, Nowadays, by going online, by listening to something on the phone. And me and Torah are one, which means me and God are one. And that's this whole holiday. And that's why this holiday is the most important holiday. It says there's 3 holidays we have: Passover, Pesach, Shavuot, Shavuos, and Sukkot, 3 holidays. And a lot of times people think, oh, well, Passover, that's like, oh, that's long. That's biblically 7 days. We do it for 8. And Sukkot is biblically 8 days. We do it for 9. Shavuos is 1 day, which we do for 2. And it's like in the middle between the two. No, we're told it's in the middle because it's the most important one, like the central beam of the structure. It's in the middle because from it comes the energy of the other holidays. It's in the middle because it's the most important one, totally surpassing the others, because it's everything. It's the Torah. When God gave us the Torah, he gave us himself. He made us his nation, from which we keep a Passover, from which we have the Sukkot holiday. If we didn't have this, we have nothing. This is where it's at. And this is about accepting God by learning, by just committing to studying. So this is what we're doing now as we're going to learn. And this is really very timely, very appropriate to just put yourself in learning. And as we said, there's so much in the world that we can't solve. But when we learn, we bring down healing blessings that can solve, healing energies. We can't solve it, but these unbelievable energies can. And that's hopefully what we're going to create tonight. So we are in chapter 19. And awesome question, remember exactly where we were. Okay, so we were discussing at length the idea of holiness and all the other stuff. And we said everything holy, as we use the term holiness or godliness, is rooted in this seminal wisdom, Chachma. Because seminal wisdom, Chachma, actually has the name Kodesh Ha'elyon, the supernal, seminal Kodesh, energy of holy, from which comes all things of Kedusha, of holiness. So everything that's on the God side that we call holy or godly has to have as its roots seminal wisdom, Chachma, Kodesh Ha'elyon. And as such, it has to have the quality, the flavor of seminal wisdom, which we discussed at length in this chapter and last chapter, is nullification. So anything you touch that's godly, how are you going to know? Are you going to smell? You're going to taste? What are you going to feel? You're going to experience nullification. Oh, I know this has got to be holy because I taste it, I see it, I sense it, I feel the nullification. And if you're not on the side of God, of holiness, there's no nullification, because nullification comes from seminal wisdom, and on the other side you don't have this godly seminal wisdom. So everything on the other side is what do you taste and feel and touch and smell? Total ego, total self, like saturated in self, all about self. And we could fall into that sometimes too, because we've got negativity inside of us that could feed that. But we could also veer away because we've got godly inside of us that gives us the other energy. But things that are on the other side, not God's side, it's absolute self. It creates this thick, thick barrier between them and God. Because God says there's no room for me here. How can I dwell here? You're taking up all the space. Not leaving room for God, you're not leaving room for anything but self. So, and we said that's actually the side of death. Because God's side is the side of life. So if we're not on God's side, the side of life, we're on the side of death. So we have death, ego, the barriers to God, and we have life. We have nullification. We have the energy flowing from God, from seminal wisdom to everything on this side. And then the Rebbe said, this is also true for people. This could even be true for a Jew. Now, a Jew, in his core, he's a piece of God. He has a godly soul. That's his truest, ultimate identity. That's his core self. So he's godly. He's on the seminal wisdom, life side. But maybe he's veered away and covered that all over. Because we have two forces inside of us. We have the godly, and we have the animal. We have the nullification, we have the ego. So if we give into the animal, we give into the ego, we give into self separate from God's self, each time as we do that, we're actually stripping away the energy from our soul, and it's feeding the other side, and we're covering over that godliness with layers and layers of contaminants, of all of this energy of self, of ego, of disassociation from God. And the soul gets weaker and weaker and weaker. It's languishing under all of those layers, and it's languishing because we keep pulling its energy and using it. We're kidnapping it, we're hijacking it, and we're using its energy to feed the other side. Imagine if someone was kidnapped and you know their bank account information was taken, and their kidnappers keep pulling money from their account and putting it in their own. So the animal keeps pulling from the godly side. Each time there's a challenge, each time it's like have a wrong love instead of a godly love. Have a wrong passion instead of a godly passion. Have a wrong strength instead of a godly strength. So those forces are being hijacked and being usurped to feed the negativity. And what happened to your soul? Your soul's in exile. What happened to seminal wisdom with all of its enormous forces of essence, God, energy, and belief, and love, and fear, and self-sacrifice? It's sleeping. It got knocked out. It's sleeping. And the soul's in exile. So what's going to change the situation? This is horrible. How are we going to wake up if you're slipping away? How are you going to free yourself if you're stuck in exile? Oh, the situation will change when you're put to an ultimate test. Because when you're put to an ultimate test, that test isn't attacking love. It isn't attacking strength. It isn't attacking compassion. It's attacking your essence belief in God. That's the real test. And that essence belief in God is the seminal wisdom, because that's where God is found. That's where the love and the fear and the belief and the self-sacrifice, that's under attack. So when she's under attack, she's being violently shaken. She's like waking up. And then when she wakes up, all of her powers come out. And there's such energy there that it blows away all of this evil, not just the evil that's currently attacking her. Years and years of layers and layers just melt away in the presence of God's energy. So the attack, which of course was bad, is actually good because it woke up the soul, and then she doesn't only pass that test, but she frees herself of this whole situation. So we are like 5 months from the bottom. And this, just as we're saying forces of evil can have this like death, ego, separation from God, so too Jews that are sinning before they come to an ultimate test to sanctify God's name, meaning a test in their essence belief in God. Are you going to die, or are you going to be a Christian or a Muslim? Like essence belief tests.
Can you just, I I decided to look inside this time, but I don't know where you are. Could you?
I am sorry, 4 lines from the bottom of page 48, the other side of page Chafdalet. Do you see it? I'm 5 words in. Key. Did you find it, Firma?
Yeah, I got it.
Great, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry. I thought I gave directions. I probably didn't. Thank you for catching me on that one. Because the chachma, the seminal wisdom of the godly soul, with that piece of God himself that is in her core. The core of the soul is a core of God. The essence of the soul of the Jew is essence of God himself. And that's embedded, sorry, that's embedded in the seminal wisdom. So what's happening? They're in exile. We actually say that that can't be an exile. It's too powerful to be an exile because exile implies something's controlling you. The force of evil can't control the seminal wisdom, within which is that piece of God himself, from the core of God himself. The rest of the soul they're controlling, and the seminal wisdom and those energies are knocked out. They're like sleeping. They're not controlled, but they're not active. The gufam in their body, from the animal soul, from the forces of evil of the left side of the heart, the residence, the fortress of the animal soul and the evil inclination. That right now has one or both degrees of control over the body, either melucha or memshala. Melucha and memshala both mean sovereignty, but the difference is that melucha means a sovereign that you want, that you accept, a benign rulership. And memshala means coerced rule, forced, like a dictator versus a beloved king with absolute power. Melucha versus memshala. And in this person who's a sinner, one or both is happening, or sometimes this and sometimes this. Sometimes it's like memshola. It's like, no, the person doesn't really want to do all these things wrong. They're really like fighting it, but they keep losing the battle. And that's some of the things they do wrong. And then there's other parts that are melucha. Yeah, I'm going with the flow, doing all this stuff. This is what I'm convincing myself exactly what I want. So this is crazy. Here's this Jew whose essence being is his soul, whose core of his soul is seminal wisdom, whose core of seminal wisdom is a piece of the essence of God himself. So the essence of the soul of the Jew is the essence of God. And he's like, yeah, I'm so cool here doing exactly the opposite of God's will. This is a great experience. What's going on? The Rebbe says, Besod Golos Hashchina Kanal. This is the mystery. A sod means a secret. This is inexplicable. This is the mystery of the exile of the divine presence. Meaning, if you think about it and you say, this makes no sense, it doesn't. And neither does any of those types of things, because this means God is being controlled by evil. The core of the Jew is his soul. The core of his soul is this piece of God himself. The core of God, the core of the Jew. How could evil be controlling a Jew? It doesn't make any sense. It's inexplicable. It's a mystery. It's part of God's divine plot, which doesn't make that much sense to us, even though we could talk about it. That God set up a situation. He set the rules up. He's the master. He's running the show. And he created the rules that he could be put in exile. Because when the Jew's in exile, God's in exile. How could God be in exile? How could a creation of his put him in exile? Because he's allowing it to happen. Why? It's a mystery. We give answers to create a situation where I come and free him, to make me a true mover and shaker, not just, it's not a fake out. It's not like, mice running and going nowhere. We're going somewhere. We're creating. What we do is real. When we do good, it's real. And when we do the other, it's real. God gave us that much power. He allows us to be his partners in creation, his partners in the process. tremendous reality and validity and significance in our work. But it's still inexplicable. Because at the end of the day, but really, it's worth it? You know, like we have this concept that, how could a Jew sin? I mean, God rules the show. Why would he let us sin? Well, he lets you sin because if you sin, you'll eventually come back. And you'll come back stronger and deeper and more meaningful and more real. And sometimes when you're watching that process, you're like, God, is this worth it? I know they're going to come back. And they're going to come back better than ever before, but is it worth it? Or if you look at it yourself and you've gone through the whole thing and you've messed up and you've repented and you're back. You say, was it worth it, God? Was that really worth it? And God says, yeah, I know what I'm doing. It's worth it. Mystery, inexplicable. We could say it, it doesn't make that much sense to us because how could it possibly worth it? We're not God. It's hard for us to fathom the divine mysteries. So that a Jew could be under the control of evil, that God within the Jew could be a hostage to this whole situation. It's crazy. It is crazy. So goes Hashchina, the inexplicable mystery of the exile, of the divine presence, of God's energy himself. And therefore, Nikris Avazu Benefesh Elokis, this love in the godly soul, this love we've been discussing in this chapter and last chapter, whose will, whose desire is to cling, is to be absolutely one with God, the source of all life. That's what I want. I want him. As I'm saying, I felt the quote I gave in the beginning from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Rebbe said this in 1958. It struck me so deeply today, this idea that like a Jew just wants to grab Torah. He just wants to learn because he wants God, and that's how he gets him. We just want God. He's it. He's everything. He's all there is. That's what we want. So this love that gives us that feeling that I want God. Hu b'shem ahava mesuteres. The name for it, we say, is the love that is hidden. It's ahava mesuteres. It's a love that's concealed. So why do I call it the hidden love? Because in sinners, it's hidden. Because in a Jew who's not connected to God, this love is concealed. It's there. Our sins didn't remove it. The forces of evil can't destroy it. They can't even exile it. It's still in our body. It's still in our soul. But I don't feel a thing. That's what means by hidden. I don't feel a thing. I don't get it. I don't know what's going on. So here you have a Jew who's a piece of God, sent to planet Earth as a mission to serve God. And he just keeps falling on his face. And for some inexplicable reason, God allows it to happen because God sees the ultimate gain that's beyond our vision. And this Jew still has inside of himself an absolute burning love for God that he doesn't feel at all. Why does he feel it? Because everything you do wrong buries and buries your soul power under those layers and layers of barriers. So it's like it's there, but it's completely choked. It completely can't be expressed. And that's why we call it the hidden love. Because in so many, it's hidden. They're not aware of it at all. And honestly, sometimes even people that are, we'll use the word religious, orthodox, they may not be aware of it either. Meaning, people could be doing the acts, but not in touch with how much they absolutely love God, how much they absolutely want God. And that's pulsating inside of us, every single one of us. If you got to know yourself, you want God. That's what you want. That's your deepest desire. And I don't know how many people know that. How many people are in touch with themselves? And that's why it's called the hidden love, because it's there. It's intense, but it's very buried under all these wrong choices. Any questions? I spoke for a long time. Any questions on any of this? Okay. So this is not the happy story. We want to get to a happier point than this. So I'm sorry, in the middle of this concept. It's called hidden because it's stuck in this like sack, like cat in a sack, stuck in this like bagged up from all the evil of the sinners. And from all the sins that a person does, this creates this energy called the Ruach Shtus, the spirit of folly. It's energizing it. That brings us to sin, meaning it works also on the side of good, and good's more powerful than evil. So here we're talking about the negative side. But like every good thing you do leads you to do something else good. And so too in the other direction. So if you went and helped someone, this sensitizes you to being good. This makes you feel so good for being good. This strengthens your soul, and you're much more liable, much more likely to do the next good thing, which energizes you to do the next good thing. That's what our sages say. One good deed leads to another. A commandment leads to another. There's lots of spiritual understandings of that. And it's true also on a very practical, physical level. As I make a good choice, this realigns me, reminds me that this is what I want, gives me the strength. I'm going to make another good choice. And it also works on the other side. Because if I make a bad choice, this pulls me down. And I make another bad choice. It's like if you had an extra piece of cake, you're like, oh, I feel so fat anyway. Give me a donut. You know, like, I lost, forget it. Today's a washout. I'm just gonna eat whatever I want. Maybe tomorrow I'll repent. Give me something else. Give me something else. Give me something else. Because the more you feel bad about yourself, the less you have any discipline and any belief in yourself to control yourself. So the good leads to good, and the other side also works in that same fashion. So therefore, each time a person makes a wrong choice, they're more and more energizing in a very spiritual, real way the negativity, the evil inside of them. And the evil inclination's voice is called the Ruach Shtus, the spirit of folly. Because it's a really weird, stupid, irrational thing to sin. Like sinning makes no sense. Especially if you speak to someone and you say like, do you believe in God? Oh, of course. Do you believe he's watching you? Of course. Do you know that he commanded certain things that you're at this moment violating? Yeah, of course. You think I'm ignorant? Of course I know all that. Do you believe he's going to punish you? Yeah. So what are you doing this for? It's just an irrational act. Like we could sometimes pretend we're being rational when we do the wrong thing. But if we're being honest, we're really being completely irrational. We believe in God. We know he's watching. We know he said no. We know he's going to strike. I'm saying just making the most simple concepts. And we just go do it anyway. Like, what are we thinking? We're completely irrational. Ruach Shtus, the spirit of folly. Folly means foolish, sub-rational, doesn't make sense. But each time we sin, we more and more empower this voice inside of us. It has more and more of a grip on us. So we just get sucked in more and more and more. And then you do something else wrong, which gives it more power, which sucks you in more. So it's like crazy. It makes no sense. But when you're in the middle of the process, like you don't compute it that way. It's basically two messages that this, I mean, obviously personalized to each individual, but there's two broad messages that this voice of the evil inclination, the spirit of folly, tells us. It says basically, A, this isn't going to hurt you. And B, I don't care about God anyway. Now, of course, everyone on their level might hear that slightly differently, but those are basically the messages. This isn't going to hurt you could mean everyone does it. Well, you think there are people in this world that don't do this? You think all the people that do it are like being struck by lightning? I've done it before, nothing happened. It's not such a big deal. I know this is called little, and God doesn't expect better of me. And I
I'll work on that when I'm up to it, which I don't think will ever happen. I don't think I'll ever be up to it. You know, all different versions. That's all versions of the same message. This isn't going to hurt me. I can do this. It's no consequence. And do I really think I love God? Do I really think I care? Do I really think I'm aware? So one person, it might be like, I don't know if he exists anyway. Another person could be like, I don't know, I used to love, but I don't really feel like that. So now I'm not so inspired. There's all this horrible stuff going on. What would God expect from someone with all this? I mean, obviously, God, when you do this to your world, what do you expect for me to shut down? So a person could say, I don't believe there's a God. Or a person could say, God, when you're doing all this horrible stuff, well, obviously this is how I'm going to feel. But it's all coming from that same voice of the evil inclination. Doing wrong isn't going to hurt. And do I have that love to do the right? Do I have that love to push? I don't think so. Actually, I know for sure not. And we hear this, and each one of us, if you think about yourself, you will find those messages in your brain because we're all struck by them. But of course, if we have more muscles, we can fight back faster, and then maybe we don't get stuck. Or maybe we get stuck in a more subtle version of that story, like I'm not up to this. Or God doesn't expect me to do this, or I'm doing so much for him. Everybody can't even understand how much I do for God. Like everyone thinks I'm crazy for how much I do. Like, for sure, this is totally not in the ballpark. And probably nobody does this because it's impossible. And such similar lines. So that's that voice of the evil inclination ramming away at our brain, and we listen. And each time we listen, the voice gets stronger. And then we listen more, and then the voice gets stronger. It could be an upward or a downward spiral, depending which direction you're going. And that's why you have to like turn it around, because otherwise you get very, very stuck, very sucked in the negative way. You have to like stop, put the brakes on, and change the whole direction. Kimai Razal, as a saying of our sages, a very powerful saying of the sages, so I was going to quote now. Ein adam chayte chule. He doesn't give you the complete quote. The complete quote is, Ein adam chayte el imkain nichnas bo ruach shtus. No person sins unless it enters into him a spirit of folly. What our sages are saying here is, you're a Jew. This is not your world. This is not natural. This is not you. Like if someone's sinning, they're being really fake. They're not themselves. This isn't, well, this is me. No, this is not you at all. You're a Jew. Your essence is a piece of God. And God does not want to do any of this stuff. And therefore, you don't want to do any of this stuff. So you've just like got so out of touch with yourself that you don't even know you anymore. And you're faking out, and everyone else realizes you're fake, but you don't realize you're fake or whatever. You don't even know anything about yourself now. You're so confused. Our sages know the truth. No person sins unless the spirit of folly, this voice of evil, convinces them, pushes them, seduces them to sin. Because it's not us. And the voice is folly. It makes no sense because the sin makes no sense. That's interesting because the Rebbe chose here a rare version of this quote. He said, Ein adam chayte. That's not the standard version. I mean, the quote is a standard quote, but there's two versions of it. A chayte, a chait, means an accidental sin. It's what we call a shogeg. A sin you did by accident. You didn't know this is forbidden. You know this is forbidden, but you know this is it. You didn't know you're not allowed to do this on Shabbos. You didn't know today was Shabbos. That's a chait. It's an accident. So the Alter Rebbe chose that very deliberately. He's saying even an accident. It's the Sabbath. You walk out of the bathroom and totally without thinking, you flick the light off. You walked in, you totally without thinking, you flicked the light on. You had no desire to transgress the Sabbath. You had no need to turn the light on or off. You just accidentally did it. You ate something and you like somehow forgot to say a blessing. You didn't mean to transgress. You have no problem saying a blessing. It doesn't bother you at all. You just like somehow didn't do it. you thought this is parv, you know you've eaten meat products, you eat it and you taste it and you're like, I don't know, this tastes too good to be parv. I think this is dairy. Oh no. Accidents. These are all absolute accidents. And none of them you have any intention to do the wrong thing. You're not rebelling. You're not in a bad space. You're not even aware. Our sages say, no, that's not true. That's not true. Nothing happens, even the accident, without you being blinded by this spirit of folly, by this seductive voice of your evil inclination that's just tripping you along in a certain road, and that gets you spaced out enough that these accidents start happening. Because a Jew is a piece of God. Because a Jew has a burning love for God. So if you're in touch with yourself, you're a piece of God. You have a burning love for God. And then what does that love want? That's what we were focusing on in this chapter. The love wants to be one with God. Remember the flame going upward, double suicide, leaving the wick below, being nothing above, but doesn't care. It just wants God. Well, that's you. So if you were really in that space, none of these accidents would happen. You wouldn't allow them to happen. How'd they happen? Because that voice like put you in a certain zone where like you just allow these accidents to happen because it's so not you. And it's such an irrational state to be doing something like this. Any questions on this? Okay. Ella. But what we've been saying until now, Shagolus Hazel B'chinas Chachma. We've been talking about the soul, the seminal wisdom in exile, right? Exile means you're under another force. And this animal soul, evil inclination, whose voice is a spirit of folly, is all like clamping down on you. Actually, to be more accurate, as I said to you before, it's not that literally the seminal wisdom and those powers of intellect are in exile. They're too powerful to be in exile. So why did the Rebbe just tell you that we're in exile? Because as we said before, everything of godliness has seminal wisdom in it, right? Kodesh ha'elyon, the supernal Kodesh, holy, from which flows kedusha, holiness, godliness, to all recipients of it. So the soul is a primary recipient of your seminal wisdom. As the verse says, HaChachma tichye ba'aleha. Chachma, the seminal wisdom, gives life to the one possessing her. That could refer to the person, could refer to the body, and it also refers to the soul. So your entire soul is being fed from the energies of Chachma, of seminal wisdom. So therefore, when we said, like a few lines ago, that the seminal wisdom is in exile, she can't be in exile. That's where God is found in the soul. It's literally, it's not godliness, it's God himself. That's way too powerful. The force of evil cannot control that. But her energy extends to the entire soul, as the whole soul is going to taste like seminal wisdom, like that nullification to God taste. So all those parts of her, those extensions of her flowing through the rest of the soul, they're in exile. But as we said already, the seminal wisdom and that core intellect energy, too powerful. It's sleeping. It's not functioning, but it's not under the control of evil. But the roots, the primary composition of this aspect of the seminal wisdom in the godly soul, it can't be touched. It's in the mind. And so it's not wrapped up in that sackcloth, that ruach shtus sap, the spirit of folly voice, which is emanating, as we said, from the negative energies fortress, the left side of the heart, in a state of literal exile. So what the Rebbe is saying here is the animal soul plus the cohort here of the evil inclination, whose voice is a spirit of folly, That's centered, as we learned a long time ago. We learned this in chapter 9. We also looked at chapter 1, in the left side of the heart. Well, where's the godly soul's fortress? In the mind, in the liver, in the heart, in the right side of the heart, which also we learned in chapter 1 briefly and learned much more extensively in chapter 9. So the liver, that expresses the action orientation of the soul. The heart, the right side of the heart, is the emotional powers of the soul. And the mind is primarily the intellect of the soul. So she's got 3 fortresses. The animal soul has 1. Now, the animal soul is primarily emotional. That's why we get into such crazy moods when our animal takes over, right? We're completely irrational and our mind is just a tool for our emotions. What I feel, what I want, that's going to rule, and then my mind will just defend it. So that's an emotional animal. That's because it's centered in the heart. It's not centered in the brain at all. It does not have a fortress in the brain. It's in the heart. It's in the left side of the heart, and it's very emotional in its powers and orientation and how it pulls us down. Since its strength is the emotion, the left side of the heart, its clutches extend to the right side of the heart, to the emotional powers of the soul. But the intellectual powers of the soul, Chachma and Bina and Das, the seminal wisdom, understanding and connection, they're there in the right side of the heart, but that's not their main place. Their main place is in the brain. So the Rebbe is saying there's like a spatial distance. There's like a natural defense system here that what's in your mind primarily is a bit buffered. It's protected from all of this stuff leaking out of your heart. And that's why it's not as affected by it. So we have the true spiritual undercurrent. Within the seminal wisdom is this peace of God, and the forces of evil cannot control that. And we have, therefore, how God orchestrated it and organized it, that there's a distance between all this emotion flowing all over the place and what's in your cold, rational mind. And that's where seminal wisdom is. So that's why the emotional part of your soul can get caught, stuck, and literally in exile, which means it's not under control. But the intellectual forces can't. So to explain it one more time, this is like the type of thing that a board would be very useful. Sorry. Inside our body, this gets a little technical, so some of you it will help, and some of you just it's gonna get too technical, but we'll try. There's 3 parts of our soul. Our soul has 5 levels. The 2 highest levels are primarily outside our body. The 3 lower levels are in our body. They're called our nefesh, our ruach, and our neshama. Those are 3 levels of our soul. The 2 highest levels for most of us are not in our body. Occasionally they are, when we're very holy they are, but we won't talk about them because they're primarily peripheral. These 3 levels have 3 different orientations. The lowest level, which we call nefesh, is primarily action orientation. The second level, which we call ruach, is emotion and speech. And the highest of the 3, which is called neshama, neshama means soul, but it also refers to level 3 of your soul, is primarily what's called Kabbalistically her parts of, her face, her main orientation is intellect. Now, not to confuse you, all 3 levels have all powers, meaning all 3 levels have the power of action, they all have the power of emotion, they all have the power of intellect. But each one has an orientation, has her specialty, her forte. So the lowest one's forte is action. You are seeing someone hungry and feed them. That is an action. That is that base nefesh of your soul. You feel the pain right now going on. You feel the pain for the Jews in Israel. You feel your love for the land of Israel, for the Jews of Israel, and you're hurting with their hurt and loving them and wanting to protect them. That's coming from the ruach, from the second level, from the emotional, primarily emotional aspect of your soul. And you're right now studying, Tanya, and learning and processing and having a deeper understanding of yourself and of God and the world around you. That's primarily the third level, the neshama of your soul. So just as each of these three have a different orientation, a different strength, though they have each have all the strength, but it's like, what's their forte? What's their primary focus? They're in a different body part that has to do with that strength. So the three parts are our mind, our heart, and our liver, which in the Hebrew, the mind is called moach, the heart is lev, and the liver is kaved. So those three body parts, the mind is the orientation of the intellectual part of the soul, the intellectual level of the soul, level 3, neshama, which has its dominancy as intellect. In the heart is level 2, the right side of the heart, where the blood is at its weakest, which is level 2, which is called the ruach, which is the emotional orientation of the soul. And in the liver, which is like the action as it's cleaning the blood for the body, that's the action, the base work, that's the kaved. That's the nefesh, the action orientation of the soul. And the order is significant. We want to be a person whose mind rules their emotions, which rules their actions. If you think of the Hebrew, moach, the brain, lev, the heart, and kaved, the liver, it spells out, you really have to be holding Hebrew to be able to do this. If not, sorry, no board here. Melech, moach, mem, lev, heart, lamed, kaved, kaf, liver, spells out melech, the first letter of each word. A melech means the king. So a person who's a king, their mind is the ruler, which is inspiring and igniting their heart, which translates to action. The highest level of soul, the neshama, and then ruach, the second level, and then nefesh, the third. If a person's heart orientation is what's dominant, we switch the letters around and they're a lemach. The lev, the lamed, the heart, and then the moach, the mind, and then the kaveh, the liver. A lemach means a fool. And if their orientation isn't even emotion, it's just action, they're a klum. Kaved, then lev, then moach. Chaf, then lamed, then mem. The action, then the emotion, then the mind. A klum means a nothing. So we want the mind, the neshama, the highest level, the intellectual orientation, and then the heart, the lev, the emotional orientation, the ruach, and then the kaveh, the liver, the nefesh, the action. And that's the person as the king, as the sovereign of themselves. So the animal soul is in the left side of the heart. So its clutches are reaching over to the right side of the heart, and that's why it could grip it so strongly and put it in exile. And once it's in exile, of course, the next level, which is even lower, is just obviously taken over. But the highest level, the neshama level, which is in the brain, which is primarily the intellect, that's like remote. Its clutches can't grip there. And that's where the core energy of God is. So it's too powerful for it to be gripped. So that's why that part, the intellect, the seminal wisdom, understanding, connectivity, chachma, bin, and das, are never in exile. They're under the control to the degree that they were put to sleep. They couldn't handle the situation. Like, say, baby, there's too much noise, the baby goes to sleep. Just can't handle it. So it doesn't have the ability to handle it. It's knocked out, it's sleeping, but it's not in exile. Why is that significant? Because if you're in exile, you're not your own boss anymore. Something else is ruling you. Something else has taken control. You're under another control. These forces aren't under another control. They're too powerful to be under another control, but they're not functioning. And that's why we said we need the attack. The attack seemingly is like a huge blow, but it's part of God's plots here to wake up the soul so it fights back. Not just this attack, but everything. It frees the entire soul from its whole exile, mystery, inexplicable of God in exile situation. Any questions on any of this? Okay, I hope that means it was really clear. Otherwise, you were like, ah, whatever. Sorry, where am I? Ruck only. So what's happening? Obviously, it's not awake and functioning, the seminal wisdom, because if it was, it wouldn't let the person be living the way they're living. In a wicked person, it's sleeping. It's not functioning. It's not under control, but it's not up. So it's not doing anything to help right now. All the accumulation of evil like knocked it out. Like if you have like too much sugar for some of us or too much flour and you just are exhausted. You can't handle it. You just are knocked out. So this energy of evil just knocks out those powers of the soul. Not exile, but not functioning, not helping. The inner behem, and she can't do her job. What's her job? The job of seminal wisdom is to make the person a godly being nullified to God. Well, obviously that's not happening because she's not doing her job, because she's sleeping, because all the evil knocked her out. So as long as the person is immersed in the world and all its temptations and all of its drives and desires, the evil just keeps accumulating, like there's just more and more and more. And the person feels like so under, like there's no way, the children's story of like there's, I don't know, like every night the person doesn't wash his dishes and then just, it's impossible because everywhere you look, it's just dirt and filth. And like, where would you even start? I think at the end of the story, he cleans up, but it's sort of that feeling of like, you're just so under, where could you even start? Where could you even make a change and let some oxygen in? It just feels that overwhelming, under, evil, like everything I want and I have to have. And then when I have it, I have something else I want, which I have to have. And it just is like, you're just led. You're just nullified to all these passions inside of you. You lost it completely. But here's God intervening. We would think, oh, like again, I know God never, ever, ever follows my scripts. He always has better ones and he never listens to mine. It's like not worth thinking because he's never gonna listen. But my script would be, oh, this person, he's so stuck. He should get like inspired. Some wonderful person should befriend him and show him the light, and he should wander into a shul one day and just be inspired by the gorgeous prayers. God says, no, not where he's holding. None of that's going to work. You know what's going to work? An ultimate challenge. So with all my love for him, with all my desire to help him, I'm going to give him a harder challenge than he ever had before. Because this is going to be a foundational challenge in his belief in God. Now, of course, for each person, that foundational challenge could look a little different. Because for each person, that translation of, wait, this means my belief in God. Just a second, someone just sent me a text and question. I want to read it. No, that's not true. No, sorry, I'm responding to the question, but if obviously if one person had it, other people have it also. As the Alter Rebbe is explaining it here, the powers of intellect, which would mean seminal wisdom, understanding, and connectivity, Chachma Bin and Das, of the level of soul, that's level 3, the highest level in the body, neshama. So the Chachma Bin and Das, the seminal wisdom, understanding, connectivity of the neshama, which is housed in the brain, they are not in exile. Everything else in the soul is, they are not. Of which of all of them, the most powerful force is a seminal wisdom, because that's where God is found, and therefore that's where belief, love, awe, and self-sacrifice is found. So here we have God, with all of his love for this person, says, I'm going to give him a really hard test, harder than he's had before, because that's his only cure. That's going to change his whole story, shake this whole thing up. So what does this mean, a test in his belief in God? So for every person, it can be something different. So in biblical times, in times when the Jews were in Israel, in the temple, it can mean a test in idolatry. Do you believe in God or not? In the medieval times, going into, pretty close to our times, it could have been what the Jews faced again and again and again. Are you going to convert to this religion or we'll kill you? You know, convert or die, convert or be beyond the sword. Every one of those is, do I believe in God enough that I'll throw my life for him? Now, in our generation, 21st century America, that's not going to be our test. So for us, it'll be dressed a little differently because that's not what's going to happen to us probably. But it's still going to be a test that for us affects our essence belief in God. So for many Jews, well, they have to go back a few years, but for many Jews, maybe like 20 years ago or so, there was a strong sense of you have to marry a Jew. Like if you don't marry a Jew, then you're cutting yourself off. And that would be for them that like test. I shared in the class, this, it affected me so deeply. What I once heard from someone, a woman who's so far removed from Judaism, but she's a professor of music in a Christian college. And she told me that she's not tenured because to be a tenured professor, you have to sign a paper that you accept this specific brand of Christianity. They're not checking if you go to church or not. You know, they're not saying if you have a cross in your house, but you have to sign. And she said to me, she said it so passionately, it made such an impression on me. Because I wasn't sure if she was Jewish. She seemed so far from Judaism, but as we were talking, this came out. And she's like, I won't sign that paper. And I'm not tenured, and I'm a single woman, and this is my whole, you know, my income. But I would not sign that paper. So that's an amazing testimony of like, fundamental, do you believe in God enough? Are you willing to sacrifice for him? And of course, other people have that in other forms in the job world, you know, that so God in our generation is giving us different than the Jews during the Crusades or the blood libels or the times of Hanukkah. But in our generation also, there will be those tests that it's affecting, do you believe in God? This for that person will be like, do I believe in God or not? And when a person is in that test, this is like violently waking up that seminal wisdom from its slumber. Because remember, we said, now to understand why it's waking it up, let's remember something said last week and I said this week. Whenever there's an attack of the animal soul in a certain area, what it's really doing is attacking the godly soul in that area and pulling its powers. So if you're loving someone that God doesn't allow you to love, the power of love of the animal is attacking the love of the godly. And if it wins and you lose, the energy of the godly love is now feeding the animal. If you're being strong for the wrong thing, for the anti-godly thing, so the strength, the power of strength of the godly is being usurped, is feeding the animal's strength in the wrong way. So when you're being challenged, do you believe in God? This is the seminal wisdom, because that's where that's found. So the seminal wisdom is being attacked. So now that she's attacked, she wakes up. She's awake because she was attacked. So when she's awake, she can function. And she could save you, not just from this, which she might just save you from this and go back to sleep, depending on what you do after. What's the day after look like? But potentially, this is the hope, and this is, in a sense, the purpose of this test. She can save you from this whole exile, stuck in the passions that are controlling you situation. Any questions on that? Okay, so we will stop here. We're in the middle, so to speak. Next week, we will not meet because next week, as we said in the beginning, is a very, very, very special holiday of Shavuot, of Shavuos, when we recommit to God and embrace him by embracing his Torah. We are told for those 48 hours, we have no evil inclination to not learn. So if you don't learn, it's just you. You can't even blame your evil inclination. And it's a very important time to learn, to commit, to establish a time to really learn, take it in, soak it into your soul, like really, really connect to the learning. And it's a time to make that commitment for the whole year. Of course, you could commit to Torah any day, but that holiday gives you the most opportune time to do so. So it's a really, really, really important time to learn and to commit to learning and to know Torah is the only food of your soul. It's the only thing that gives strength to your soul is Torah. So it's worth it. And it's the way you and God become one. Like we said, commandments are you expressing your nullification to God, and that's very important. But with Torah, you become one with Him. Only exclusively, uniquely through Torah do God and I become fused, become absolutely one. It's a very special gift. It's a very special opportunity God's giving me. He's allowing me to become really, really, really close, specifically when I learn. And if I look at learning that way, it's like, wow, what a gift. What an opportunity. Not only like what information am I learning or what reward I'm accruing for learning, but like, wow. And of course, it is a source of tremendous, tremendous, tremendous blessings. And we need blessings. And right now, the world needs blessings. And Israel needs blessings. So it's really great to bring this enormous, enormous healing energy into the world through Torah. It says that God, the original giving of the Torah, everyone agrees. It's unusual that everyone agrees on something. You know, usually we have some argumentation, but everyone agrees that the Torah was given on Shabbos, because Shabbos is a day of peace, and that's what Torah brings to the world, is peace. So it's really appropriate now to cling to that Torah a little harder to bring down its energy into the world. So, does someone have something they'd like to share, something that happened to them this week that they'd like to thank God for?
Can I just ask, like when you were giving all the reasons why a person is, captured by the evil inclination or whatever, but you didn't really go into the fact that so many Jews don't even know that they're Jewish, and if they do know, their education ended when they were 3 or 4. Like they don't have, like they're captured by a society that is not Jewish, and they don't know what it is like. So it's totally unintentional. It's not like they are, I don't care, I don't know if I love God. It's like really like being almost clueless, like captured, like, that's that you didn't kind of go into that like possibility, but I like
It's
that's
true. I mean, 100% it's true, and that's unfortunately the Holocaust of our generation. It absolutely is. All those people that might not know they're Jewish. They know they're Jewish. They have no clue what that word means. But we believe that every person is given the opportunity to escape that as well. Like there's a reason God put this soul in this world. Well, why would God put a soul in the world born to parents that maybe identify themselves as Jews and definitely don't know what it means, and the child is definitely raised not knowing what that means? And like, why would the soul go through that? Well, there's a reason. There's something that soul is supposed to accomplish in that situation. And free itself in that situation. Like going back to the story I shared of that music professor. So she's not religious, but she's absolutely sacrificing for God every single day. Amazing testimony to the power of a soul. So we don't know, because we're all at the end of a road, meaning we're all reincarnations. We've all been here many, many times. Generationally, our entire generation was here by the Tower of Babylonia. Our entire generation went through the Exodus. Our entire generation was a generation of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, of Rashbi. And all of us personally have been here many times. So this lifetime is supposed to accomplish whatever those last shreds that we didn't do in any of our other myriad lifetimes. And we don't know what it is, but seemingly every single person, even the people in the situation you're saying, have the opportunity to do what they need to do to finish off the work of all their lifetimes. And that's why we just try to reach out and extend whatever knowledge, whatever awareness we can to anyone, Jew or non-Jew, to help them get a little closer or a lot closer to God. Because who knows? Who knows why the soul's in this world? And who knows if this act is the fruition of their soul's journey. There's
Okay, thanks. That's the,
someone have something they'd like to thank God for, a miracle that happened, a nice thing that happened.
I have a miracle. Well,
Let's hear it.
today's been like the longest day. Well, I got woken up by Toby's little boy who got a hold of the phone at 7 in the morning. And that's a little earlier than this Bubby gets up. So that's how the day began. And then all the news about Israel. And then Toby called me. She says, you have to stay on the phone with me. I smell smoke in the house. And I called Swilly, and he didn't answer his phone. And I called the office, and he's coming home. And I called the fire department, and then all of a sudden, 6 fire trucks arrived, and they couldn't find where it was smoking. The house was filling up with smoke. It turns out in the garage there's an electrical panel, and there had been a leak that was coming down, and I guess it changed where it was leaking, and it leaked into the panel there and caused like a lot of shorting and stuff like that. And some of the fire people said that if she wouldn't have called, they might not have had a house after 5-10 more minutes. So that's like a huge miracle. Then we were like talking like all the miracles in it, even though it's, damage and all that, you think about it happened in the daytime, so they didn't have to get the sleeping kids out from a smoky house and everything. And
She was there, and she was home, and she caught it, and she called, and
so it was, I mean, my heart's been like, not believing it. And then you look on your computer or on your phone and see what the Iron Dome is doing in Israel. It seems like so many different things are compressed into a short time period lately.
I think it's God desperately trying to bring Mashiach.
Yeah, that's
Compressing and compressing.
I'm davening. It's like every different emotion goes into it, like wanting it to happen, trying to manage what you know and believe in Hashem, that he's just taking us every second and showing us what we need to see and what we need to learn and everything. But it gets hard on a person.
Yes. But it's good to be in a space of gratitude. That's a very healthy space to be in. It's good to focus on the gratitude. And the more we focus on the gratitude, and the more we see how much we have to be grateful for, and the more we feel secure and safe. Because like, wow, Hashem taking care of me in this big thing, and in this little thing, and yesterday, and today, and this morning, and this afternoon, and everywhere I look, I see Hashem's beneficent hand. So I don't have to be so tense. I could relax. I know I'm in very, very, very safe hands.
So, I mean, but really, Baruch Hashem, things turn out different sometimes, but Baruch Hashem, they.
We have to keep up our tefillos.
Yeah, and they had a birthday for the 3-year-old, Devorah Leah, so she was able, after the power went on, to bake her a cake. Great.
Wow, talk about iron nerves, sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, but it's really a miracle.
It definitely sounds like one. I'm very sensitized to fire miracles. I know, I can hear it. I hear what happened, and it's just, Baruch Hashem, she was there, and Baruch Hashem, nobody was hurt, and Baruch Hashem, they came when they did, and they
Baruch
realized,
Hashem.
wow.
She said she doubted herself if she was crazy, that she was smelling something and imagining maybe, or, you know, when you're in those years when you're not getting enough sleep.
Baruch Hashem. She called her mommy, she had strength.
She says you can't hang
That's a
up
big
now.
compliment of the story. That she called you. I was like, okay, Ma, you got to hold my hand virtually through this phone wire. That's amazing. That's a miracle. It's
Okay.
big statement of the story. But we should have positive miracles, and we should always see and feel Hashem's love. We should experience it. We should taste it. We should feel it.
Amen. Amen.
Anyone else? Doesn't have to be as dramatic, but anyone else have something they'd like to thank Hashem for? So what sometimes happens is when someone says something as dramatic and intense and oh my gosh, like that, like you feel like, what? I'm gonna say how I found a spot in the parking lot today. Like that's so stupid. But whatever we're gonna say, we're not gonna say it. We all day long should be singing our gratitude to Hashem. It's the healthiest space to be in. It's the most grateful space to be in. When we're feeling like that, everywhere we look, it's like dusted with Hashem's glow. We really, really just see it. And therefore, all the things that haven't worked out yet, we're just so relaxed. We know they're going to work out the same way because this worked out and this worked out and this worked out and this worked out and this worked out. So this is also going to work out. It's just part of the same package deal. God running his world. God taking care of us. So just to connect to Mashiach, Shavuos, we know is such a Mashiach energy because Shavuos is the giving of the Torah. And Mashiach is the ultimate completion of that when we receive the Torah Chadashim Iti Teitzei, that new dimension of Torah that God, of course, originally gave 3,333 years ago, but it was locked up in a box and we didn't have the key. And when we have the complete revelation of Mashiach, the box will open and we'll be that close to God, that we'll have that level of Torah as well. And again, Mashiach's process started off on Shavuos, because Shavuos is a day we say when we became married with God, but we didn't really technically. We became officially engaged. In the Jewish laws, there's an official engagement. It's a real deal. Like if you break it off, then it's a divorce. But then there's the marriage, there's the consummation of the relationship. So we became officially engaged 3,333 years ago, Shavuos. And Mashiach is the marriage. We've been waiting a long time, but we know, as Sarah said, and I agree with her, such pressure, such intensity, so much happening. It's all part of this process. And there's such intensity. It's like so fast, soon. This process that we should have a complete revelation of Mashiach now. And everyone should have
Amen.
a total
Amen.
acceptance of Torah
Amen.
inwardly and with joy in a very, very, very real way, every single one of us. And make sure you're in synagogue, you're in shul on Monday to get the Torah that God's giving. If you don't make it to shul, you're still going to get the Torah. But God would like you to be there when he's giving it. So whatever time you find a synagogue near you that's reading the 10 Commandments, you want to be there for it and say, God, you're giving, I'm receiving. Have a wonderful Shavuos. Kabbalas HaTorah.
Man. Why is Shavuos one of the least known holidays if it's the most significant? Like why, like if
This
like a
is
lot
an upside down world. That's what the Midrash says about our world. Everything, no, it's literally everything
Okay.
that's up truly seems down, and everything down is up. So it makes sense. It's a really good point from that. People are like, that's that holiday? Oh, cheesecake, right? When like, hello, this is like the source of it all. Like this is a source. All of Judaism comes from the holiday of Shavuos. So therefore, in our upside down world, it's like, yeah, like some little minor holiday, right? That's just indicative of everything else. Our world is like so, but I don't want to talk about that because it would go in that direction, but so upside down
people spouting falseness and claiming it's truth. I mean, just everything. And it's just like, we know Mashiach's coming.
You don't have to worry about where you're gonna eat or what you're gonna eat, but you have to stay up all night.
All right, well, we'll see about that, but
I know.
have a good Yom Tov, everybody.
Have a
and,
good Yom Tov. Have a good Yom Tov.
Okay, thank you. Yeshua
Thank
was
you.
beautiful.
Thank you, Cyril. Thank you as always.
Thank you.